Chapter 28. The Seekers loyal to the Autobot cause were all running patrols, either to protect the fusion power conduit along the Kali-Kon Road or far to the east, where the danger of mass incursions from Decepticon foot soldiers, or their vehicular altforms, was a constant danger. The sole exception was Jetfire, the Autobot's sole defector from the Seekers, who was deep in a lab devising ways for some Autobots to engineer their altforms' flight capability. It might well have been a dead end scientifically, but Optimus Prime believed that the Autobot chances in the war would improve dramatically if they could at least harry the Decepticon strength in the air. Automated defense missile batteries were useful sometimes, but to make a real difference the Autobots needed intelligent warriors in the air to match up with Starscream's well-trained and battle-hardened squadrons. They did not have those warriors right now, as Starscream closed in on the rocket form of Omega Supreme and the critical cargo he carried. "Roll out," Optimus Prime ordered his lieutenants. "We're not going out on counter-infiltration patrol today. Megatron is either still in Yakan or on his way. Let's get him." The natural rotation of Cybertron would have carried Omega Supreme's launch point away to the east as he rose straight up out of Cybertron's gravity well, had he not detected the pursuit of Starscream and undertaken evasive action. Deploying wings since he had achieved enough altitude that the thickness of the atmosphere wouldn't tear them apart, Omega Supreme arced away back to the west, remaining over Autobot-held territory while still trying to fulfill Teletran 1's imperative that he reach space and go on to the designated location for the plasma energy chamber. Where that was, he did not know yet. The protocol for that was to be unlocked when he reached orbit and had shaken off the Decepticon pursuit. Having lain dormant for most of the war, Omega Supreme had to assimilate much of the contemporary history of Cybertron through a high-level grid connection. The facts shocked him. 85% of the surface of Cybertron under Decepticon control. Only 3 members of the High Council at the time the rebellion began still alive, and all 3, including Ratbat, gone over to the Decepticons. The Allspark ejected from the well. Sentinel Prime dying. It was a miracle, concluded Omega Supreme, that the Autobots still fought on. And that miracle could be laid squarely at the feet of Optimus Prime. Amazing that a data clerk could take control of history and raise himself to take on one of the more dire challenges that Cybertronian civilization had ever faced. Internal challenges were always the most dangerous. This was always true, and for Omega Supreme it was particularly true, as he had 7 Seekers hot on his trail. Grimly he went on, accelerating in a spiral toward the zero-gravity haven that, unless Teletran 1 had plans he did not know about, awaited him on the other side of Tripticon Station. Optimus Prime was gifted with extraordinarily acute optics. He zoomed in on the aerial battle taking place over Yakan just as the 7 Seekers split into 3 flights of 2 and attacked from left, right, and below. Volleys of missiles spat from the wings of all 7 Seekers, and a nanoclick later explosions flared along Omega Supreme's flanks. Then the Guardian returned fire, or no, Optimus Prime realized he had fired first, but his armaments were different. Omega Supreme's normal missile batteries could not be deployed in the atmosphere while he was flying at full speed. Instead he had a string of missile pods located near his thruster cones. They opened and ejected round missiles, which, once they were clear of his slipstream, reconfigured themselves to fly and target the nearest enemy. Optimus Prime had read about this system in the archives long ago, when he was merely a clerk. Now he saw it in use, as one of Starscream's Seekers suddenly seemed to be surrounded by a cloud of tiny sparks. These were the drop missile's engines flowering into life. A moment later the Seeker disappeared in a blackening fireball. Pieces of it, none bigger than Optimus Prime's head, tumbled in a long, shallow arc from the impact point back toward the surface of Cybertron. Not a nanoclick after that, the second member of that flight spun out of control as one of its wings blew apart into shrapnel that flew back and shredded its tail. Helplessly it began to spiral away into the rugged distance. Optimus Prime did not see it hit the surface, because simultaneously with Omega Supreme's fatal hit on the second seeker came a bright flare from the rocket's own exhaust. Optimus zoomed in and saw that two of the nozzles were blown away. Already the effect was visible. Omega Supreme's perfect upward spiral suddenly flattened out, grew ragged. The 5 remaining seekers, Starscream among them, cut in and concentrated their fire on the damaged spot. Their missiles struck home even as another of Starscream's officers exploded a nanoclick later, falling out of the coalescing fireball armorless and with legs flailing because it had reverted to proto-form in the panic of its devastating injury. Omega Supreme's long form yawed off its axis and then, as its thrust failed further, began to tumble. "No," Jazz said next to Optimus Prime. All of them watched. "How can they destroy the Guardian?" Ironhide said, in a display of emotion unlike any Optimus Prime had seen from him. Omega Supreme's fall to the surface seemed to take forever, as the 4 seekers harried him all the way down, stinging his armored exterior with continued volleys of missiles and iron cannon bolts. "Mission change again," Optimus Prime said. "What now?" Prowl asked. "Move out for the impact site," said Optimus Prime. "If the plasma energy chamber survives the impact, you can believe that Megatron will be coming after it." As he finished speaking, Omega Supreme hit the surface. Starscream and the other 3 seekers pulled out in sharp climbs from the mushrooming explosion that rose from the impact site. The pillar of fire hung in the air, seemingly fed by additional explosions from the impact. Optimus Prime imagined all of Omega Supreme's missiles exploding, tearing his alt form apart, or dismembering his proto-form, if Omega Supreme had somehow managed to reassume it at the moment of impact. Optimus Prime mobilized, taking alt form with the rest of his squad and redlining toward the impact site, but he could not imagine how this mission might end in success. He would recover the plasma energy chamber, perhaps, and perhaps could even sequester it somewhere again, but the loss of Omega Supreme was disastrous for the dwindling hopes of the Autobot cause. They arrived at the crater, skidding to a halt and reassuming proto-form as soon as their momentum wouldn't pitch them into the smoking depths of the crater itself. Across the rim, partially obscured by that smoke, loomed the figure of Megatron, in alt form, his tracked hulk bristling with weaponry and surrounded by the wheeled turrets of his closest gladiator minions. They reassumed their proto-forms nonchalantly as Starscream and the other 3 seekers roared overhead. "We've come for the plasma energy chamber," Megatron said. "But we have found so much more." "You're about to find a little more than you bargained for," Sideswipe growled. Megatron grinned, the violet light of Dark Energon playing about his eyes. "Wonderful," he said. There was no chance, Optimus Prime thought. He did not want to waste the lives of those Autobots who were dearest to him, and who meant the most to the potential survival of the Autobot cause. He was about to order a retreat. 3 of the powerful Seekers had fallen that day, as well as who knew how many of Megatron's other soldiers down in the subsurface collapse. Even that total could not balance off the loss of Omega Supreme, but the Autobots' situation was dire enough that they could count this a success on the mere grounds that they had not lost any of the bots they had begun the day with. Yesterday they had not known Omega Supreme was available. Therefore his loss was not so terrible. And the plasma energy chamber could not have survived, could it? "Are you thinking what I'm thinking?" Jazz asked quietly. Optimus Prime looked at his oldest friend. Bumblebee, too, awaited whatever order he would give. "I might be," he said. "Outstanding," Jazz said with a wink. He turned and without another word blew the turret off one of Megatron's gladiator altforms. "No." Optimus Prime was about to say, but then he realized, yes. What else could they do? They could go down fighting, because if the plasma energy chamber had survived only for the Autobots to lose it, all was lost. He fired, too, lighting up a line of shell explosions across the opposite rim of the crater. From the smoke came a fusillade of return fire, and around the crater Optimus Prime could see the proto-forming gladiators, darkened and in full charge. The dark energon made them feel invincible, and sometimes Optimus Prime thought they nearly were. It was certainly harder to put them down when they were darkened than at other times. They would fight. If this was to be the final confrontation of the war, then so be it. Optimus Prime would meet Megatron and best him, or he would die in the attempt. "Librarian," came Megatron's voice from the smoke. "Let us decide things once and for all." Optimus Prime reared back and threw a fallen piece of Seeker spinning across in the direction of the voice. He heard the impact and the surprised and angry shout of Megatron. "Coming for you, brother," Megatron said, low and menacing. "You know where to find me, brother," answered Optimus Prime. "One shall stand, one shall fall." He was ready, with his 3 closest Autobot confidants, to take on these dozen or more darkened Decepticons with their Seeker support. They would fight as they knew how to fight. And then, once again, everything changed as the gargantuan proto-form of Omega Supreme stood ponderously up out of the crater. Optimus Prime could not remember a sight that inspired him more. Through all the long ages of the war, all the defeats and the signal successes, all the death and the ruination of Cybertron, here, this resurrection of Omega Supreme had him believing anything was possible. "Fight, Autobots!" he thundered. "For Cybertron, fight!" The battle was joined.
I'm glad you enjoyed that video/gameplay. Just remember to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment down below. Until next time, goodbye!